Friends, today we have a very hot issue. A German politician in the European Parliament made an absolutely boorish, disrespectful, incorrect, and simply disgusting speech addressed to Viktor Orbán. The German called the Hungarian Prime Minister a useful idiot for his cooperation with Russia and China, as well as for allegedly violating the fundamental principles of the European Union. It was extremely disgusting to watch his performance. I thought for a moment about how low the culture of discussion has fallen in Europe if the European Parliament allows itself to insult the leaders of states. But Viktor Orbán did not tolerate the insolent German's words and responded. He soon took the floor and just blasted this German, as well as all his critics, to smithereens. At the same time, he did it as correctly and diplomatically as possible, but with words that were understandable to everyone. He told the cruel truth, which is generally kept silent in Europe. So, friends, get ready to hear a sharp confrontation in the European Parliament. Well, in turn, I will say a few words about what is happening in Europe. So, friends, let's get started. Viktor Orbán's conflict against Brussels is no longer just a diplomatic war. This is a real battle for Hungarian sovereignty, which runs counter to the liberal policy of the European Union. Orbán has long been an eyesore in Brussels, and his criticism of the European Union is gaining momentum. The central point of the confrontation is Hungary's desire to preserve its independence and the right to make independent decisions, while Brussels puts pressure on it by all possible means. Financial sanctions and the freezing of payments from EU funds have become the main instrument of pressure from the EU. This money is intended to support the economies of the EU member states, but Hungary is simply not given it under the pretext of violating the rule of law. In practice, this means that Brussels is dissatisfied with Orbán's harsh attitude towards foreign media, which often act as agents of the Western agenda and actively interfere in Hungary's internal affairs. Orbán has repeatedly stated that through these organizations, the EU and the United States are trying to destabilize the situation in the country, undermining traditional Hungarian values. The conflict has especially escalated in recent years. Brussels accuses Orbán of violating democratic norms due to his harsh policies towards migrants and independent media, especially outraged that Hungary has introduced laws severely restricting the activities of organizations funded from abroad. Meanwhile, Brussels literally exploded with criticism after Orbán went to talks with Vladimir Putin in October of the 23rd year. The Hungarian Prime Minister visited Moscow, despite the EU's tough anti-Russian line. This visit has become a real challenge for European leaders. Orbán dared to go against the collective West, saying that Hungary would not support a policy of sanctions that was ruining the European economy. Orbán has clearly indicated that his interest is the well-being of the Hungarian people, and not participation in the geopolitical games of Brussels, which are extremely questionable for Hungary. For Hungary, Russia remains an important partner in the energy sector, and Orbán has no intention of sacrificing his country's interests for the sake of abstract EU goals. Of course, Brussels did not leave this step unanswered. Hungary was immediately subjected to a new wave of criticism from both the European Union and individual member states, especially Poland and the Baltic states. Orbán was accused of betraying Europe by making friends with the dictator Putin. However, the Hungarian Prime Minister holds firm. He knows that the path to his country's well-being is not through confrontation with Russia, but through dialogue and pragmatic relations with Moscow. And if this is unacceptable for Brussels, so much the worse for the EU. And now, friends, as promised, the very performance of the German. First, I'll introduce him to you. Moritz Kerner is a German politician and member of the European Parliament from the Free Democrats Party, which is part of the Renew Europe group. Born in 1990 in Düsseldorf, he represents a new generation of European liberals. Kerner is actively involved in issues of transparency, the rule of law and control over EU budget expenditures, promoting the idea of strengthening the responsibility of EU institutions. His criticism is often directed at countries that, in his opinion, violate European democratic standards such as Hungary and Poland. And now, friends, listen to that boorish speech of the German. What kind of speech, Mr. Orbán? What kind of speech? You say you want democracy, you brag about your majority in the Hungarian parliament, but for several years now you have been ruling only with the help of emergency decrees. Mr. Orbán, you claim to be in favor of national sovereignty, but you invite Chinese police officers to monitor people in your country. You claim that you want to stop migration, but at the same time you let Russian spies into our Schengen area and call it national protection. That's exactly what you're doing, Mr. Orbán. You are not a patriot, you are just a useful idiot for Russia and China. This is the reality. You say that you want to fight for economic competitiveness, but you continue to introduce new corporate laws and taxes in order to oust European companies from your country and turn Hungary into a banana republic. You have robbed your population and enriched your family and friends. Under your rule, Hungary has become one of the poorest and officially the most corrupt countries in the European Union. What kind of scam? What is the burden for your people? A school bully should not become a school principal, and that is exactly what we have done in the European Union by inviting Hungary to the position of chairman. That is why this parliament has called on the council to change this. Could have been done easily, but we've already done it with the British. They've changed the presidency of the council. There should be no presidency of the council when a member state violates our fundamental principles. But Orbán immediately responded not only to him, but to all his detractors. Please note that Orbán did not give in to emotions and responded very correctly and diplomatically to his abusers. Listen to what he says, quote, "I would be happy to talk to you about the program of our presidency that I have presented, but I see that you are not at all interested in this. Do you want to throw a party full of leftist liars here? I think this is pure political propaganda. If you want to do this, then you can do it, but I was very surprised by what I heard from the President of the Commission because it is unequivocal. There are disagreements between Hungary and the European Commission. That's clear. I did not specifically raise these issues, given that, as chairman, I do not consider it right to discuss these differences when we talk about the Hungarian presidency. This is wrong. Unfortunately, this has never happened before. The previous president of the Commission would never have said that. It has never happened in the past. As stated in the agreement, the Commission is the custodian of these agreements. It was a neutral body. Its task was to monitor the implementation of these agreements. But now that has changed, and instead of being the guardian of treaties, the Commission has become a political body, a political weapon that you want to use to attack the patriots of Europe. We may have different points of view on well-known issues in Eastern Europe, but the reality is that, thanks to the President of the Commission, the European Union adheres to this conflicting position. If we want to win, we need to change this losing strategy that we are currently implementing. Mr. Weber said that no one talks to Hungary. This is an insult to those people who communicated with us when we were preparing for the presidency. The party is not telling the truth. He claims that Hungary's ruling party did not win the European Parliament elections. We got 45% of the votes, and you in Germany got 30%. So which one of us won? And you made personal comments, so I'll say a few words too. Anger is a bad advisor. We know what the conflict between us is. Starting from the year 2018, this is one of the key reasons why you could not become the head of the Commission. I supported you and promised you my support, but then you said that you did not want to become president of the Commission with the votes of Hungarians, and you did not become president. That's why you're mad at me. I'm sorry for you, but there's nothing I can do about it. And please don't focus on personal insults, but rather discuss European issues. Ms. Verez, I believe that lack of knowledge is not a good basis for debate. You say that Hungary has high taxes. We have a flat tax rate of 15%. Hungary's economic growth is twice the EU average, and you're talking about Hungary's poor performance. Orbán continued his speech, in which he emphasized the importance of facts and true data, noting, "Aren't facts important to you? I see that a member of parliament from France, from the Vozrozdani faction, does not like the Hungarian constitutional system. You have to accept the fact that we have the right to our own constitution. Our constitution protects families. The Hungarian constitution protects marriage and children, and our constitution says that marriage is a union between a man and a woman, and it also says that the father is a man and the mother is a woman. You won't be able to challenge it." He also touched upon the corruption allegations, saying they were not true. I have to reject them. We could exchange personal attacks on this issue, because I think this body of the European Parliament has a certain expertise in corruption scandals and wants to have the right to speak with other states. Orbán continued, touching on the topic of economic relations. Hungary conducts trade transparently. What about your countries? You can see that many of the countries where you came from are bypassing sanctions through Asia and continue to trade with Russia. I'll give you the figures. Every month, the European Union exports $1 billion more to some Central Asian countries than before the conflict between Russia and a well-known country. Why? Because this is how sanctions are circumvented. German, French, and Spanish companies are avoiding sanctions. Orbán went on to give an example of oil. Western countries first, with the outbreak of the conflict, bought €8.5 billion worth of oil from Turkey and India. This is hypocrisy. In the third year, Western countries bought 44% more oil from Russia than before. The tax revenues of these companies went to the Russian treasury, and then you accuse us of being friends with Russia while you finance them yourself. In the end, Orbán emphasized his intention to present the program of the Hungarian presidency, rather than engage in political confrontation. The truth is that I did not come here to read these facts to you. I had no such intention. I have come to present the program of the Hungarian presidency. I would like to say that there are problems with competitiveness, migration issues that need to be addressed, and the Hungarian presidency has ideas. We would like the parliament to support us in this. That's why I came today. But you decided to turn it all into a political confrontation between the parties. I find this very unfortunate. If you attack us, I will defend my country. Orbán concluded his speech by emphasizing the hypocrisy of the European Union on trade with Russia. The hypocrisy of the European Union on trade with Russia is not just a calling card of Brussels, but also a fundamental feature of its foreign and domestic policy. Despite all the public statements and moral sermons about the need to end cooperation with Russia, especially in the energy sector, the real picture looks much more contradictory. European leaders continue to publicly condemn Viktor Orbán for his strong stance on maintaining trade ties with Moscow, threatening sanctions and diplomatic isolation. However, at the same time, the EU countries themselves actively continue to purchase Russian energy resources, such as gas, oil, and other energy resources, in fact violating their own sanctions. Since the outbreak of the conflict in Eastern Europe, the volume of oil and gas purchases from Russia by the EU, contrary to official statements about sanctions, has even increased. On the one hand, European leaders are vociferously condemning Moscow, demanding Russia's complete isolation in the international arena. But on the other hand, the real figures show that gas supplies from Russia to the EU through third countries continue to grow. Oil also comes through intermediaries, which allows European countries to stay afloat amid the energy crisis. This is especially evident in relation to Hungary. Viktor Orbán has long taken a principled position on maintaining relations with Russia, which irritates Brussels. However, his decision not to abandon Russian gas led to Hungary becoming one of the few European countries that did not face a severe energy crisis, when energy prices in other EU countries skyrocketed. Hungary continues to receive gas under long-term contracts, rather than at spot prices, as Brussels demanded back in the 21st year, when other EU countries were under pressure to switch to short-term spot contracts with Gazprom. Then Hungary refused to follow the instructions of the European Union, and as a result, Budapest today has stable and predictable gas prices. Friends, I would like to express my opinion on this material. The hypocrisy of the European Union is manifested in the fact that, accusing Hungary of dependence on Russia and demanding a complete severance of trade ties, the EU countries themselves continue to look for ways to circumvent their own sanctions by concluding deals with Russia through intermediaries. Germany, for example, continues to import Russian gas through other countries, hiding behind complex schemes in order not to formally violate sanctions. This became apparent after numerous investigations that showed that gas supplies allegedly coming from the Middle East were actually transiting through Russia. The double standards of Brussels are becoming more and more obvious, and Hungary in this situation looks like a country that was not afraid to resist pressure and relied on its national interests rather than political instructions from Brussels. Friends, who do you think is right? A young German or an experienced Hungarian leader? Be sure to leave your comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon.